We also have an elder benefit specialist. Those two programs do kind of mirror each other, and she works with individuals who are aged 60 and older. Similar benefit questions, Medicare, people who are new to Medicare, reviewing Part D plans, those kind of things. We have services within the ADRC, so we work with anyone over the age of 18 if there's situations specific to abuse, neglect, financial exploitation. We handle all of those referrals and investigations. We have a dementia care specialist, so that's a new position to the ADRC as of this year. Dementia care specialists have been rolled out throughout the state in phases. Counties got them in phases. And with the last budget, with the last governor's budget, it was decided that all ADRCs should have a dementia care specialist. So our DCS started with us in January, the end of January, and so she's actively training and learning and working with businesses to become dementia friendly. She can meet with families, caregivers, and go over, dementia communication, education. So she'll be doing quite a bit more for us as she gets her feet wet. We have a youth transition specialist who works with individuals aged 17 and a half and older as they transition from children's services into the adult world. Typically, the individuals that she's working with have an intellectual or developmental disability diagnosis. We have the prevention services coordinator, Rain. Rain's position is also new to us this year. She will be focusing on health and wellness, marketing, outreach, and education, so we can offer more consistently programs like Stepping On, Falls Prevention Program, and Healthy Living with Diabetes to help keep people safe within their own homes longer. We have a nutrition program coordinator who focuses on the nutrition programs such as home-delivered meals if people cannot leave their home and would need their meals brought to them, and our dining sites, which right now with COVID are a carry-out meal program. We have the family caregiver specialist, Lori, and she's going to delve kind of into her programs in a little bit, but handling the National Family Caregiver Support Program and Alzheimer's Family Caregiver Support Program. And then we also have both transportation and nutrition drivers to help with those pieces. Okay, so one of the core services that we provide at the Aging and Disability Resource Center really is information and assistance. So you can come to us with whatever question you may have, and we will connect you with the resource that's out there to possibly meet that need. If we don't know the answer, we're going to look it up. If it might not exist, we're going to have that conversation with you and brainstorm other options that might work. Yes?
So like for example, this location here, for example, members of this church cover 4 counties. Are the county programs, do they talk to each other or able to work through based on where the person lives?
Yes, we would typically refer someone to work with the county that they are residing in. So that's not to say if you have a question about what might be out there for someone or where to refer someone, you could certainly call us. But like I said, every county has an ADRC, so we would refer them to the county that they live in to get those resources. We often get consulted, especially counties that are on the edge of Fond du Lac County. We will sometimes reach out to Green Lake County or Dodge County, depending on what the need someone might have, and if we could meet that need through the resources of another county. Sometimes home care agencies, we find success actually in having people cross county lines versus what options are maybe available within our own county, depending on where someone lives. Programs, like some of the prevention programs I was talking about, we may not look at county lines as much with those programs. It might be just open to anyone, regardless of where they live. Some of that has also been modified just with virtual options that exist because of COVID. And if we're going to offer it virtually, do we need to have a county line? Did that answer your question? Okay. We can go to the next one. So I'm not going to go too much in this, but I kind of explained what the disability benefit specialist works with. They do have the age parameters, so if she would get a call and the person would be over 59, she would refer them to the elder benefit specialist, which is on the next page. So these programs, they do see a lot higher traffic during open enrollment. I don't know if any of your mailboxes get flooded during that time of year reviewing Medicare information, but know that they exist if you would have any benefit questions or needs. So youth transition, like I talked about, typically working with folks who have an intellectual or developmental disability and transitioning out of children's services into adult services. That's not to say we can't work with someone who they may have an intellectual or developmental disability, and maybe they've been residing with a loved one for a lot of years, and maybe that loved one's health is declining, and now they may need additional care. We do get those kind of referrals as well, but usually the youth transition worker is handling those. I briefly touched on the Dementia Care specialist. So again, that's a new position to our department, but not new to the state. As those rolled out, the state really saw how valuable these positions were, especially recognizing that caregivers are so important, need to be recognized, and we need to foster the natural supports and caregiver relationships that people have, and recognize what hard work that it is to be a caregiver, which also leads to, I touched it, I think it didn't turn on, talking about respite needs. So, yeah.
So is the memory screening that the county has the ability to test someone to see if they have any other forms of dementia?
Correct. So it's not going to be a formal diagnosis, but what we can use the memory screen for is an initial, like this, you may have a concern and you may want to follow up with your doctor, and then we're sending a copy of that memory screen, if the person gives us permission to do so, to their medical provider. So several staff at the ADRC are trained in how to do memory screens. The Dementia Care specialist will also be trained to do memory screens, and that's something that if you'd have, we will be offering in Ripon, as well as the other communities in Fond du Lac County, but if you'd have enough people that, we could certainly have her come and do them here as well. Okay. And please feel free to ask questions throughout. This is for you guys, and we're just so grateful you're all here. So if you have questions on something, please feel free to just ask them throughout. It's easier than trying to sometimes save them to the end. So health and wellness, this is an area that we have offered classes over the years. Healthy living with diabetes, stepping on living well with chronic conditions is typically an evidence-based prevention program that the Senior Services Department has offered. So just being able to offer these more frequently and consistently to people and in multiple areas throughout the county is kind of our goal. We're starting with a focus of healthy living with diabetes and expanding from there. We will also be one training that both Rain and Alyssa, who's the Dementia Care specialist, will be going through is powerful tools for caregivers. So that will be an evidence-based program that is going to be available to help people who are a caregiver and be able to learn tips and tools really to help in that role. Adult Protective Services is another big function of the Aging and Disability Resource Center. So APS is not housed in the ADRC in every county, but in our county they are. So we investigate referrals, like I said, of abuse, neglect, financial exploitation. At times we need to pursue guardianship and protective placement for individuals if they're no longer able to make their own decisions. So that is a big function of what we do. We are seeing, unfortunately, a rise in financial abuse and trying to address and stop that. So we recognize, the vulnerable population and ability that some of these folks have to financially abuse people. We're seeing an increase in scams, and those kind of things. So if you're ever not sure on something, please call. We'd rather talk before you send money or lose anything of your belongings or people. Okay. Do you want to maybe do some more on the next one? Or do you want to start? Is that okay? Okay. So these are the newer programs that have historically been housed under the Department of Senior Services. So I might have to tap Lori to help just a little bit, but I wanted you guys to kind of know now that we will be one team, one unit, what's all out there. So we do have the transportation program. So we have several different options. Those options look a little bit different right now, especially with COVID. We don't have all of those options running. But we do have drivers who can assist most frequently in Ripon right now just with medical appointments. So I know that's a need for people, and we're continuing to assess that need. Did I miss anything that you'd want to add?
As far as like with the medical appointment transportation, what that is it's a personal vehicle that an employee of Fond du Lac County drives, and he can provide transportation to people who are able to get in and out of a vehicle, basically unassisted. So it wouldn't be for someone who's in a wheelchair because we can't provide that assistance. So in order for someone to be eligible to receive that service, we do need to have a doctor's certification on file ahead of time prior to scheduling the ride that a person needs. That is something that we can assist with, though. We just fax that information to the medical provider's office, and then they fax it back to us once we get, the information from the individual who's looking for the transportation. It is limited on time. Our driver, the earliest pickup that they could do probably in Ripon would be like 8:20. And they do have to be done with their transportation by 4:30 in the afternoon. But as long as someone lives in Fond du Lac County, we can actually transport them outside of the county. For example, if somebody has a medical appointment down at Freighter, let's say, and they don't have anyone else that can get them there, as long as we have that doctor's certification on file ahead of time, and we have the space and time available, our driver would be able to provide that ride down there and back again, as long as it was in that time frame of 8 to 4:30. Okay? So it's a really nice form of transportation that a lot of people aren't aware of. It's just we do have certain limitations on it. And of course it is first come, first served. So we might not always have the time available that somebody wants. So the earlier people know about it, the better it is for them to call and ask and inquire about it.
And if it's a transportation option or service that someone needs that we cannot serve through the county programs, we would always brainstorm with folks other transportation options that might exist to meet that need. Okay? Okay, next up is the elderly nutrition program. So again, this is a little bit different right now specific to COVID. Typically we have senior dining sites that are open for congregate meals and then home delivered meals. That shifted a little bit with COVID, and right now how things look is specific to Ripon. Meals can be picked up at the Ripon Senior Center unless someone would otherwise be eligible for the home delivered, the mobile meals to their home. Do you want to get more specifics on that? Eligibility for
Yeah, so for the home delivered meals or mobile meals, it's kind of known by both. The official name is home delivered meals. It's a nutrition program for people who are age 60 and older. So if someone wants to pick up a meal at the senior center here in Ripon, they do need to call and reserve that meal in advance by calling our office or calling the senior center. But there's no eligibility requirements other than being age 60 or older or married to someone who's age 60 or older. The home delivered meal program is also for people who are age 60 and older, and that does require an assessment process, but anyone can call about the meals for themselves. They don't have to get a formalized referral from a healthcare provider or anything like that. But our menu is fixed, and it is for a general diet. So we are only able to serve those people who can have a general diet. So we do require your healthcare provider or a healthcare provider to certify that you can have that. Anybody who needs a therapeutic diet, if they can't, like if they're diabetic and they aren't able to eat a general diet, we would refer them to Ripon Medical Center because they have a meal delivery service as well, and they are able to accommodate those general diet, those therapeutic dietary needs.
Where does that meal come from for the county? Where does it come from?
So our meals come up, we contract with a caterer called Files out of Randolph, Wisconsin. So they actually serve several neighboring counties, and that's where those meals come from. We do also have currently open a dining site. One dining site is open in Fond du Lac, and the caterer that we contract with for those meals is Boda's out of Fond du Lac. Okay, so Lori is going to touch on her programs a little bit more, but just to really focus on kind of the respite piece, because that's kind of, I think, the main focus you guys were hoping to hear about. So there are tons of different options available to respite. What we will talk through with people, we like to sit down and talk through with what someone's needs are, what kind of care is someone providing, what kind of assistance or break do they maybe need. It's brainstorming, would maybe a home health care agency coming in a couple days a week, maybe an hour here or there be enough to help someone, and what options exist for that. Maybe we're looking at exploring different adult day programming to be able to give someone a break. So it's really trying to get a full picture of what needs someone may have to be able to best present the respite options. So it's hard to kind of give this is always what's going to work for someone unless you know what's the situation that someone's going through. So really that one-on-one talking through is the best way to meet someone's needs. What we will talk through with is either if someone starts directly with the National Family Caregiver Support Program or Alzheimer's Family Caregiver Support Program, or if they're starting with one of the information and assistance workers, we're going to talk through what are your needs, how can we meet those needs, do you have funds to maybe meet those needs, and what options might exist. So on the information and assistance side, the workers would possibly explore some private pay options or publicly funded long-term care options if the need is that great. Or we might be having that referral go directly to Lori, or working together to get connected to talk about kind of her two main programs. So I'm going to let you touch on that, and then I can kind of take back over, and then we'll open the floor just for any specific questions. Okay?
And definitely, if you have questions, please, just feel free to ask them. So like Jacqueline said, just sitting down with people and talking about what their specific needs are, because every situation is very different. What might work for one family or couple may not work for another. And the National Family Caregiver Support Program that I coordinate is a nationally funded program through the Older Americans Act. So it's been around since about the year 2000, and it can provide some funding to help people pay for respite type services. So as Jacqueline indicated, might be having supportive home care services come into the home, and whether that's help with cleaning or laundry or meal preparation or even personal care services, bathing, whatever that might be. Or it could just be companion care. Sometimes a caregiver just needs to be able to get out of the house, go to the grocery store, and get groceries without having to worry about their loved one. They can have somebody just come and be there as a respite provider so that they can go and run those errands without worrying about them. They have that sense of knowing that someone is there to keep their loved ones safe. It can be, funding can be used for adult day services. I'm not certain that there's an adult day service program here in Ripon. There was years ago. To my knowledge, there isn't one currently, but there is one in Fond du Lac. And that's a place where somebody can take their loved one for half of the day or part of the day, just to give themselves, the caregiver, a break. It can also, the funding can also be used to help people pay for durable medical supplies that are covered by insurance, or incontinence supplies. That's a big problem for many, many caregivers. Those supplies do cost, you know, they run up in costs, and so this funding can help pay for those types of things. With the National Family Caregiver Support Program, it is not based on your income. Eligibility really is based on the fact that there's a caregiver and a care recipient, and that care recipient really needs assistance with activities of daily living. It also can help people who are caring for somebody who has any form of dementia. Whether it's diagnosed or not, it doesn't matter. If somebody has memory issues and their caregiver is struggling taking care of them, the program can be put in place to help assist with funding for respite services for that. The other program that I coordinate, the Alzheimer's Family Caregiver Support Program, is a Wisconsin state-funded program. And that's actually been around even longer, probably, I think it started back in the late 80s. And that program is specific to help families who are caring for someone with some form of irreversible dementia. So that eligibility for that program does require a medical diagnosis, and there are some income eligibility requirements for that one as well. But basically, the funding can cover the same types of supports, whether it's the in-home respite, adult day services, durable medical or supplemental supplies. We also can fund even like a temporary short-term respite in a facility. So, for example, I've had a family where they like to go camping, and so they would have, they were actually taking care of an aunt, an elderly aunt, and so they would have their aunt go to a facility for the weekend, and then they would be able to go camping, and it just gave them that little bit of break from the caregiving that they were doing 24/7. So both of those programs, like Jacqueline said, whether you contact the caregiver programs directly or start with an information and assistance person, the main goal really is to have that sit-down discussion, kind of see where things are at and see what different options might be helpful to you specifically, because every situation is very unique and different. There is not a one-size-fits-all, that's for sure. Does anybody have any questions right now?
So that's we wanted to just give, I forgot, we wanted to just kind of give an overview because, we can tell you generally, this is what's out here for respite. We can look at respite in a facility. We can look at respite through a home care agency. But like Lori said, there's no cookie cutter. So really having those conversations of what, if it's you, if it's someone you know, what someone may be going through, and what their needs are, we really have to assess to be able to get that full picture to provide the best information that's out there. So knowing not only about the respite options, but also what other options exist, what other services. Maybe just need information on lawn care. We don't have a lawn care list, but we can tell you how to find it. Just knowing that we exist is step one. Coming here so you guys could learn more is so helpful, and so thank you for having us to be able to explain everything. If you guys have specific questions, please ask them. Yeah.
So say I needed a respite from caring for someone here in Ripon and wanted them to go in a facility for say 3 or 4 days and everything worked out. Would they be put in a facility here in Ripon, or would they have to go to Fond du Lac or something? I mean, is it set up so that the nearest place?
Do you want to take that, or do you want to?
And
I'll add to it probably.
Yeah. Excuse me. Basically what happens is facilities will offer short-term respite when they have space available and they are able to accommodate that. So my example is probably not the best, to be perfectly honest, because right now most facilities prefer not to do a 3 or 4 day respite. Most of them prefer to do more like a 7-day minimum. And the reason for that is because there's a lot of paperwork that goes into that to make sure that everything's as it should be, medication, the doctor has to write their orders and all of that. So it's a little bit more complex. But as far as the facility, that absolutely is up to the family to decide. But what it boils down to most of the time is who has space available and who is able to accommodate it. Because they don't all have space available. And really, a lot of them are just now opening up to doing that short-term respite again, because of course during COVID they absolutely couldn't do that. But now they are starting to open up a little bit more, but many of them it is really more of a 7-day minimum for that respite. But I've had people do that when, like I had a caregiver where she had to have a hip replacement done. So she was able to go in, get that hip replacement done. She did like a 3-day rehab herself, and her spouse was able to stay in a facility for that 7 days so that she could do her recovery, and then she came home even before he came home. And it really worked out quite well because she was able to make that adjustment back home and have that couple of days before he came back. But each situation, again, is so unique and different. But I think, like Jacqueline pointed out, really looking at lots of different options. And just getting back to like a home-delivered meal, sometimes that's actually one of the first steps that people take in getting services in their home. Caregivers don't sometimes think, well, I cook the meals, I can do all of this stuff. Sometimes getting just one meal a day brought in can give them a break that they really hadn't thought of. And just getting that started can really be sort of that catalyst to think, wow, maybe I could use a little bit of help with vacuuming or changing the bedding or whatever it is. So sometimes it's those baby steps. It's not always the big, huge, let's solve this big problem. Let's start small and just get those services kind of started.
I was just going to add, Lori explained that so well. And typically what we would do, there are a lot of wonderful facility options in Ripon. So what we would be able to offer is really that list of here's all the facility options that exist within Fond du Lac County. Our list does break down a little bit by town, so you'd be able to start with the Ripon ones and go from there if that was something that someone was interested in. Again, if we're looking at maybe exploring crossing the county lines, because there may be a facility that someone's interested in that might not be in Fond du Lac County but is a little closer, we would be able to reach out or explore any resource lists that county's ADRC had and provide that as a starting point. You know, we are in a little bit of a caregiver crisis, and I say a little bit, and that's not true. It's a big crisis that we're in finding professional, thank you, in finding staff for not only the facilities, but also the home care agencies. So I think that goes on to what we used to be able to say to folks for what's available for a respite option, and what is now with facilities does look very different. And that's for two big reasons, not the only reasons, but caregiver shortage and COVID. So we've always recommended to people, tour facilities, tour places, know where you may want to go, see where you may want to be comfortable, but recognize that if there comes a point where you need that, it may not be an option. And it may not be an option for a couple reasons. They don't have any openings. They can't meet your needs, whatever it might be at the time. So it's helpful to tour, but just recognizing that if you tour, that might not be an option at the time that a person needs it. Did that answer your question? What else? What other thoughts do you guys have? Or if you have something more personal that you'd like to talk about, obviously we are happy to just meet with you one-on-one too, because we recognize that some of it might just be more personal. Another thing that I was kind of thinking about too is just along the lines of support groups and those options. If you need information on that, we can provide information on that. You know, the Alzheimer's Association does a lot of wonderful things. They've switched a lot of their educational offerings to virtual through COVID, and actually as of April are going to be starting to offer things in person a little bit more. Another wonderful option for caregivers out there is the Caregiving Conference that's held annually by the Dementia Care Network. I'm going to blank on the date, September 16th, if that's a Thursday. But if anyone would want to...
information to Monica.
Monica, yeah. That's another wonderful resource with breakout sessions and keynote speaker, and then in the expo area, different vendors and information that's out there all come to that conference. And it's really for caregivers. Did I miss anything?
I just want to expand on that.
Yep.
So I have some of the caregiver brochures over on the table over there. Not very good with microphones. So feel free to take one. The phone number on there comes directly to me. So if you have questions, feel free to give me a call. If I'm not there, just leave me a voicemail. I will always call you back. One thing I do just want to point out, I don't know if this affects anybody in this room, but part of the funding for this program is for grandparents. So we've seen quite a large increase in grandparents who are caring for grandchildren. It actually includes also even just other relatives who are caring for a grandchild or a child that is not their own biological. For people who are age 55 and older, and in that situation where they are living with that child who is under age 18, and they are the primary caregiver to that child, we do have some funding to help pay for various different, needs. So if you know of anybody in that situation, absolutely share my phone number, share my contact information, and I can talk to them about that. There doesn't have to be any formal arrangement with that other caregiver or other relative caregiver, or grandparent. It doesn't have to be a formalized guardianship or adoption. It just means that that child is actually living with them and they are doing the primary care for that child because the biological parents are not able to or are not choosing to.
Think of it as you're talking.
Another thing just to know about kind of all of our services in general is although our office is located in Fond du Lac, we would definitely be able to meet with people here. So staff can come out and we do things by phone. We can do home visits if people aren't comfortable with someone coming into their home. We've met with people before at the library, kind of in a neutral location. So especially recognizing that sometimes it may not be easy for a caregiver to leave the home to meet with someone. We do home visits and can accommodate whatever needs someone has to be able to get the information out. Okay? Yeah.
You mentioned about if a caregiver wanted or needed some help with staying, if they wanted to get groceries or go, do that kind of thing, then how is the time that the person that comes to stay with the ill person or whatever determined? Is it just according to what they need, or is it 1 or 2 hours, or how do you determine that?
So I'm going to answer that just in kind of a general scope, not specific to even thinking about funding. It's going to be what that caregiver needs, how long they may need to do whatever they're going to do, or how often they're going to need that respite. So what we would have to have that one-on-one kind of conversation about is how often, and do you have the funds to cover the cost maybe of that home care time to come in? If you don't, here are the programs that might exist to help with that, which could kind of dictate how much time someone may have depending on what funding is available. But we'd have to kind of have that one-on-one conversation to work through what the need is and how are we going to meet that need. Did you want to add to
I just
that?
want to add one thing. Sometimes it depends on the provider.
Yeah, that's
So a lot of the supportive home care providers, they are, it's non-skilled level care. It's not, you don't need a registered nurse to come in or anything like that. You're just looking for somebody to be there. Those are called supportive home care services. And there's many businesses, a number of different businesses that provide those services, and they are privately owned businesses. They are not regulated by the government or anything. So they kind of set their rules or their guidelines for what they're able to do. And as Jacqueline referred before, there is a big shortage of professional caregivers. So these supportive home care businesses are really doing their very best to accommodate whatever needs families have, but they also have to be realistic. So some of them will say that they will provide services to you, but it'll be a minimum of 2 hours, or it will be a minimum of 2 hours every other week or something like that. That's a discussion that you can have with that specific provider, but it really does kind of sometimes come down to what they're able to provide to you in the needs that you have. They want to provide whatever they can to help you, but sometimes they have some limitations as well with their staffing. So, does that answer the question? Okay. The other thing I just would say about supportive home care services is it's just like anything else. You can shop around. You can call different places, whether it's, community alternatives, well, they're not even providing services. Comfort keepers, visiting angels, whatever it is. There's a lot of different businesses that provide those services. So I always encourage people to, just make some phone calls, write down kind of the things that you're looking for, and just have a discussion on the phone with them. And sometimes you can discover some of those specifics just in that phone conversation.
You said it exactly how I was going to say that. I was just going to add, we recommend the same thing when people are talking maybe to a home care agency or touring an assisted living facility. Know what's important to you. Know what you want, what you need. I need this much time this often, and that will help you kind of in knowing what kind of questions to ask the agency. One question that might be important is, where is the staff coming from? Is mileage going to be a concern, especially because you're, potentially a little, with being in Ripon, that might be a factor. It might not be a factor with every agency, but it may be a factor. So asking those kind of questions. Some people want a consistent time. I'd like this day every week. And that looks a little bit differently with the current climate we're in. But know what's important to you. Write those things down so that as you call these entities, you'll have a little bit more insight in what to ask. If you're not sure what to ask, that's another thing that we do talk about with people, coming up with questions or things to think of when you're working with asking these entities questions. Wanted to add?
We tag team.
Oh gosh,
Asking the questions, writing it down.
Yeah.
Does that come back to you at all?
This is what happens.
You give her the mic and she
When daylight savings time or a limit on that. Age has nothing to do with it, of course. I'm going to give this back to
Okay.
what I was
It'll come to you. But who else has questions? Other thoughts? Yeah.
Do you help
Oh, I know.
families, how do I put this, find facilities for their loved ones according to their needs? Do you help facilitate that?
So do you want to say your thought, or are you going to remember it before I answer?
No, answer.
Okay. We do not typically help find the facility. We would tell families what facilities exist. There are situations where if it's more of a crisis, because we do have the Adult Protective Services Unit, if there's a safety concern where we're helping quickly get someone placed. So I'm not going to say we never do that, but it's not typically something that we can do. But we will tell you what facilities exist and how to go about calling, touring, asking those questions. Did that answer your question?
And I'm just going to touch on that just a little bit. I think sometimes too, and Jacqueline can speak to this too, sometimes people think that the best option is placement, is to have somebody go somewhere. And definitely that is certainly a good option, and sometimes it is the only option. But I always do encourage people to think about the services that you could potentially purchase in your home to keep you there safely as long as possible, and these supportive services that can come in. Are they expensive? Yes, they are free, they do cost money, but they are less than if you go to a facility. So that's just one thing I would encourage. I do encourage people to just kind of think, okay, are there other options that we can put in place here, even temporarily, before you think about having somebody placed, or if you have to put it off for a period of time, still try to get services in to give yourself or that caregiver a break. That's definitely important. The thing that I forgot that I do remember now is when you're looking at supportive home care services and contacting these agencies, they really can usually accommodate your requests if you have a regular schedule that you want. They can't accommodate as well if you just say, well, I'll call you when I need you. Then you're going to get somebody different all the time. There's not going to be consistency. So if you can kind of decide, yeah, I'd like to have somebody come in here 2 hours every other week, and commit to that, the provider can accommodate that many times better than just the as-needed call. So that was the only other thing.
And I was just going to add to your comments about sometimes placement is not the best option. And we would love to talk with someone before placement to make sure that they're well aware of all of the home delivered services that might be available or options that might be available over placement. Our goal is to always have people stay in their environment as long as it's safely possible where people want to be. I like to be at my house. I know it's my comfy, happy place, and I recognize that most people want to be in their home. They like their home. They may have had their home for 50 years, more than that, whatever it may be. So we a lot of times will hear, the doctor said it's time to move to an assisted living. And I have the utmost respect for doctors. I am not a doctor. They are much more intelligent than I, but they may not know about all the services that can be brought into someone's home or that are available to people. So we like to talk through that fully. Is it time for placement? And then recognizing, does that person who maybe you're caregiving for that might need these services, what do they want? Because they have a voice in this too. Are they their own decision maker or not? Because all of that plays into the conversations that we're having with people and what the plan is going to be. Do you have to add to that? I don't.
Maybe you can comment on a lifeline. You get these calls all the time on the phone advertising hearing aids and lifelines and that. Should you have better information on where to even inquire about a lifeline if that comes up?
Sure. So we have a personal emergency response system list. That is the brand. One of the brands is called Lifeline, but we do have a list that exists of available options that exist in our area. So again, it's going to be that we're not biased. We're going to tell you about all of the options that exist. We have crafted our list to include information that people ask us. If we get asked a question enough times, we think, maybe we should put that on the list. And people have asked us over the years more about the on-the-go options with GPS, having concerns maybe of wandering and things like that. So our list now includes that information. We're not going to be able to tell you, use this one and not that. But recognize that if it's not a safe, not a reliable option, we would not have it on our list. So if that's anything anyone would want, I'd be happy to send that information out. But know that these are just available options, legitimate businesses. We try and put the price if we can. Sometimes it's hard to put the price of stuff just because it does change, and that's a little bit more difficult to keep up to date. But did that answer your question? Again, another safe option that can help keep someone safe so long at home. Lori mentioned, maybe it's just getting some meals in and having that lifeline on that can keep someone safe so much longer versus having to move to that higher level of care right away. Yeah?
How do people usually find out about you? Are you able to have information at a doctor's office that they can say, go here and find out these things, or how do people know where to get a hold of you or find out?
Yeah, well, coming to things like you guys did today, telling your friends, hey, did you ever hear about this place? Those are great. Word of mouth very much helps us. We have done a lot of outreach to doctors' offices, the medical providers. It helped significantly when SSM created their outpatient social worker position, so she was very well aware of us. I'm on the radio once a month, the AM radio in Fond du Lac. We try and partner with, and are continuing to try and strengthen our partnerships with the senior centers and other entities. Being on professional networks to meet people and get invited to things like this is really how we try and get the word out. Obviously, we're trying to increase our marketing, outreach, and education efforts, which is part of the reason Rain's position was kind of created. So more people know about us, because we recognize that, you know, the aging population is significantly increasing, and we need as many people to know about us really before they need us. We'd love to talk with someone before they're in a crisis.
Do you want to answer that?
That's why, too, I think sometimes the meal programs, like our carry-out meal program, that is another place you can get information or ask for information from the senior centers, or, I always encourage people to reach out to your county offices, because we're all taxpayers. We, have these services available to us, and if you aren't sure where to go, that's why the Aging and Disability Resource Centers were created, as being that first place for people to go with questions. But definitely, when you're talking with your physician, they are, your healthcare provider, they're so busy. And we try really hard to reach out to them and make sure that they know about our services. But again, the outpatient social workers have been really wonderful, and parish nurses are absolutely a wonderful resource of information. So, yeah, that's always a challenge. It's always been a challenge to get information out to people and just let them know what's out there and available to them. So, just keep asking.
And making sure people understand, like your question said, how do you know which ones are legitimate? Making sure people understand that we are a county service, so we're a trustworthy source, because we're not getting anything out of the information we're giving you. It's just a service, because people need to know what's out there. So it's a continual effort, marketing. Tell your friends. Tell everyone. Anything else? Well, we'll stick around if you guys have anything more one-on-one specific that you'd like, or would like our contact information for another day. We're happy to give that out. So we thank you guys so much for coming tonight and learning about what we have to offer. And if there's anything we can do to help, please give us a call, okay? The contact information's up there, or Lori has stuff with